So there must be a strong competition somewhere outside, since we lost a couple of some of the audience here. But nevertheless, it's going to be very interesting session again, the next one. We remain with the adaptation within the adaptation group, or group of two projects which have been or are presented here. Again, my name Bernd Decker from the agency SENEA, the Green Deal Agency, representing the Live Climate Action subprogram here, and I would like to welcome Veneto ADAPT, which was a project for the recent years to present here. Veneto ADAPT is well, I would place it maybe in the context of the EU adaptation strategy into the area of supporting smarter adaptation. I mean, you have been working a lot on the data generation, the knowledge formation. You have been at the frontier. But not only this, maybe a small anecdote. Long time ago, because I was always wondering, why are Italian cities so active with the Covenant of Mayors? And you are really on the forefront in mobilizing mayors, in subscribing or joining the Covenant of Mayors, not only for the energy part in the past, but also for the climate part in the more recent times, that you set up these sustainable energy and climate action plans, or climate and energy action plans, implementing those action plans. And you always have been with a lot of mayors coming to these kind of events and supporting this. And with the project of Veneto ADAPT, you have been pushing forward also in joint venture with other areas or regions in Italy, not only Veneto. And I would like to welcome you, Giovanni Vicentini, I suppose. You are the Sustainable Technical Officer of the Municipality of Padova, but you have been working in other projects in different parts of Italy already. Since 3 years, you're with Padua, and Padua has been coordinating this Veneto ADAPT initiative, which is standing as an example for the activities in other regions of Italy. So most welcome to this session here, and we are very curious and keen to hear your presentation. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much for this invitation. Thank you to SENEA. Thank you for all of you being here. I would like to start my presentation with two considerations regarding adaptation to climate change. So outside my presentation, just to start. As you know, probably in Italy, we had the elections this year in September, and we had this summer droughts, forest fires, heat waves, floodings. Probably one month ago, you heard about this event in Marche region. We had extreme events. We had the spreading of mosquitoes, the West Nile, etc., connected with the climate change. And if you look at the agenda of the political bodies in Italy, nobody has included the adaptation to climate change in this agenda. So I think this is important for us as local authorities to boost a little bit from the bottom up, the topper level in Italy, because we need really a change at the national level and then at the regional level. And the second consideration is a comparison between mitigation and adaptation, because we heard a lot of mitigation this morning. And in mitigation, it's quite easy because you have some investments to be made on buildings, for example, but then you have energy savings and savings in money. So you can have a calculation quite precise of the return of investments. You can involve the private sector. Sometimes the private sector is the one taking the leading of the investment. And on the other side, if you want to tackle with adaptation, you need to completely change your perspective, because you don't have a return on the investment. You need to invest, and probably you need to invest to avoid future costs. but these costs are usually hidden costs. So the people don't see those costs. They see the investment at the beginning of the process. And this is, again, a difficult part of our work. So those who are working on adaptation, they have to face these constraints, because you need to make investments, mainly provided by the public sector. And on the other side, you can't see exactly a saving, but you can just see the costs avoided. And in our work, it is really important, and then I start with my presentation, to calculate those avoided costs at the beginning of the process. Because when we speak about investments, here we are in the investment forum, and if we speak about adaptation, you must start your process calculating the avoided costs in the future. This must be the starting point. And then I can start with my presentation. So I will present the Veneto ADAPT project, which is a project ended last year, based in the Veneto region. So we are in the northeast of Italy. Probably you know Venice for sure, but we are the coordinator was the city of Padova, and probably you know also the city of Padova, quite popular for the historical city center. And it was focused on a multi-level approach for adaptation to climate change, because we had the regional level. We had some cities involved, bigger cities, more or less like Leuven before, but we had also smaller cities, 10,000 inhabitants, dealing with adaptation to climate change. So you need to change again the perspective. We had also a union of municipalities, so a group of municipalities working together, small municipalities, and then the technical experts supporting us. So here the innovation is working in different levels together with a joint effort. So the region providing the regulatory framework, the city is providing the planning, the vision for the future, and then the money to implement the actions. And then the smaller cities, the smaller municipalities working together, sharing their efforts, and sharing their knowledge about this topic. I want to speak about the process, because when we speak about adaptation, we need to speak about an iterative process. You need to start with some preliminary analysis, and then I will show you what we did in our project. Then you need to plan. So we had this SECAP, an important plan for the municipality, the only plan managed by the municipality concerning energy and climate, because this is the only instrument that at least the Italian municipalities have a disposal to tackle these topics. And then you need to implement the plan. It is the tough part of the activity. And then you need to monitor those actions. And it is an iterative, because you always need to change the actions, to include new actions, to review existing actions. You can see here the main results, but I will go through these slides. And here probably one of the most important phases in the process, the initial analysis. We started with the involvement of the key stakeholders in our. That the involvement is important because you need to inform them about the process, but you also need to have from them to co-create with them the plan, because they are already doing a lot of things concerning adaptation. You just need to give them visibility, give them a frame, and this is the role of the local authority. So the involvement of the stakeholders should start since the beginning, and then you need to work with them until the end of the process, until the adaptation of the city to climate change. Probably 10 years or 30 years will be able to reach these goals. And then you need to also to analyze your plans, the existing plans, because we understood that at least more than 600 actions were already there, already in place, already managed by the municipalities, but they were unconscious actions. They were not branded as adaptation actions. So the first step is also to make them visible, to give them a brand. They are adaptation actions, so they need to be seen as adaptation actions. You can see in these two slides the list of stakeholders we have involved. So you have a lot of people, but also companies to be involved in the process. You have the experts, you have the planners, the operational bodies. For example, also the civil protection. It is an important aspect to be considered when you speak about adaptation. You have the policymakers, the general stakeholders, and also the last one is really important to us, the citizens, the local experts, not officially recognized, but having local knowledge. They know the territory, they know what's happening at the local level. they must be involved in the process. Here we provided this map, quite useful. You can see in this map, probably you cannot see, but you see a map with a list of names. Those are all the stakeholders involved in our city, only the city of Padova, and only in one topic, because this is representing probably the heat waves problem in our city. So you can see all the different stakeholders categorized by the 6 categories, and then you have the inner circle representing the local stakeholders, those active in the city, and then of course you need to involve also the nation stakeholders, because when you speak about adaptation, you are managing, of course, many things happening at local level, really site specific, but sometimes, quite often, you also deal with many activities or phenomenon acting at territorial level. For example, the rivers, it's not the boundary of the municipality, but you need to involve the river basin, so a bigger territory. Then the plans analyzed, as I mentioned before. So we have a lot of plans in the municipalities, and probably we are not really aware even internally about the number of plans and the number of actions in each plan. So we have the land use plan, the intervention plan, the town plan, the building regulation, the SECAPs, sustainable urban mobility plan, etc. We have a lot of plans. What is missing is the integration of these plans, because we are always working in silos. And the SECAP is probably the unique instrument to put everything together, to integrate all the other topics, and to give a view and a vision to those plans, a vision, a perspective in the 2030 to 2050, so a long-term vision. And then we analyzed the actions already included, and we understood that, as I mentioned before, more than 600 adaptation measures were already there, already approved by the municipality, but unconscious. So they were not really branded as adaptation measures. And we understand, we categorize those actions in different typologies according to the type of intervention, according to the intervention strategy. For example, reactive, you can see emergency measures, transformative measures, so the measures transforming exactly in deep the territory, so part of probably of the town plan, and then the expected effects of those measures. And you can see the categorization. So we started from these actions because we included those actions in our SECAP. And then, of course, we included also new measures coming from the participatory approach, the process. We have spoken about, probably before, about the analysis of the vulnerabilities and the risk of the territory. This is an important aspect of the process. And here you can see the municipality of Padova. And we understood exactly, precisely, with the GIS tools, with the satellite imagery, you have a lot of information available also at European level with the Copernicus satellite. You must understand exactly where in your city you need to act, because you don't have the money to act everywhere, but you need to act only in those parts having the higher impacts. Here you can see 2 phenomena, the hydraulic risk in our city, and then the heat waves. And for example, you can see here these red points represent the part of the city having the higher impacts concerning heat waves. You can see part of the historical city center really at the beginning. You can see part of the industrial area, which is quite impervious area. So you need to understand where to invest, where to include those actions presented before by Leuven, for example. And here you can see just a summary of the numbers of the percentage of areas at risk in our city. You can see quite high percentages. And then you can move on after this initial analysis to the plan. So we provided with this project a SECAP template for all the municipalities in our region, but of course also for other municipalities outside the region. We provided this standard data sheet for the collection of all the measures, and I will show you the form of this data sheet then in the next slides. And then one of the most important results, probably our project, the identification of the key actions to be included in all the SECAPs, the mandatory actions. We provided a list of 7 key mandatory actions to be included in all the SECAPs to be recognized as adaptation plans. Otherwise, they cannot be adaptation plans because they not have the minimum requirements to be effective in that topic, in that field. You can see here the data sheet. This is a representation of one action, for example. you can see immediately, you cannot see again exactly, but you can see more or less all the key information you need to share with your stakeholders. If this action is, of course, mitigation, adaptation, if can be both mitigation and adaptation, a description, the effects, the costs, etc. You have all the information you need in this sheet. And this is important to be shared with your stakeholder. So everything should be really a summary, because you need to speak with them. They don't provide you enough time to explain everything. So you need to be short enough to explain the key aspects of the action. And then you can see here the list of the 7 mandatory actions for our SECAPs. You can see the first one probably is the most important for a municipality, at least in Italy, because we have an important role as regulatory authority. We provide rules to the privates with the building regulations, and we can ask them to increase the minimum requirements. So we can provide them also the incentives to increase the level of the requirements. For example, we provide some volumetric incentives sometimes, depending on the actions implemented by the private. The second is, of course, the hydraulic risk reduction, and here we need to start to have water plans in our cities, for example, concerning the hydraulic risk. We have this important aspect of civil protection, which is always a part of the adaptation process. There, of course, you need to, the civil protection help you in managing the effects of the extreme events, not in prevent the extreme events, but this is a part of the process, of course. You have the urban forestation. You have the establishment of a resilient office in your city, which is the office dealing with adaptation to climate change, and put it together all the sector, all the departments involved somehow in this field. And then you need to monitor the climatic data. And here we have an important agreement with our environmental agency at regional level, providing to us the data concerning the climatic trends. And then the last point, probably one of the most important, the cooling of parking areas larger than a certain amount of square meters, which is also important because we also need to change the way we are planning and designing our public parts of the city. As provided before, Leuven provided a lot of examples on this regard. You can see here, probably I need to go faster. How many minutes, Bernd? 15. Oh, okay, perfect. So you can see here the steps we followed with our participatory process. So an internal sharing before, so we our departments, then an external sharing with the selected stakeholders, the map showed before, and then before with the key stakeholders, those really important at local level, and then with everybody, with the entire list of stakeholders made available before. You can see here the way we co-create with them. So we heard about living labs in these recent years, the co-creation process. It's something that exists also at local level, and the municipalities must follow this process. We need to co-create with them. The process normally begins with the definition of the common ground. We need to speak everybody the common language to understand everybody what we are speaking about. So we need to have a similar language to speak about the same topics. And then we need to you can see here, we started with plenary sessions and then smaller groups. You need to speak with them. You need to co-create, to identify the actions that we are already doing and integrating those actions in your plan and the contrary. And then the end of the process is the sharing of a final document agreed by the members and sometimes even more. For example, in Padova, we have an instrument which is called collaboration pacts. So some pacts signed between the municipality and the private or public operators. So the agreements, shared agreements. And then we have the SECAP. Probably if some municipalities are here, you have a SECAP with this 2030 perspective. The municipality of Padova started with this process, and now as Leuven is in the 100 climate neutral cities mission, so we have this new goal to reach the climate neutrality by the end of this decade. Quite a tough result to achieve, but this is somehow the way we drafted our SECAP. And then you can see the results. This is the cities included in the project. You can see the first one is the Padova, so we have more than 100 actions. Each one is described with that data sheet that presented before. You can see the initial result expected by 2030, so halving more or less the emissions compared to the baseline. But now we have this new objective of reaching the climate neutrality. And you can see also the results expected by the other members of the project. Of course, one of the steps of the process, so we now are in the phase of the planning, then the implementation, and you need to monitor the plan. So it is important to understand, at least we decided to adopt this approach, to have the results indicator to monitor the single measure, two indicators, quantitative indicators to monitor the single measure, also to be able to evaluate a trend in the future. Only with quantitative data you are able to do that. Otherwise, with qualitative data, you're not able to really understand how the things are going on. And then you have the impact indicators. So understanding what is happening at the territorial level, the whole SECAP. So you have a limited number of indicators. We've selected more or less 10 indicators, key indicators for monitoring the entire evolution of the implementation of the SECAP. So the indicators for the single measure and the indicators for the whole SECAP. And then you have the socioeconomic indicators, because, and here again, probably connection with the investment forum, you need to understand what is happening from a physical point of view, from an environmental point of view, but then when you speak with the stakeholders, usually, and also the citizens, you need to provide them also economic data. So the results you expect in terms of energy savings, because the SECAP also include the mitigation part, but also in terms of investments needed for the adaptation of your city and the costs avoided again. This is really an important aspect to be taken into consideration, and a difficult one also. And for example, here, what we are trying to do, we are still not able to do that, to involve also, for example, the health system to understand the costs of emergency intervention, for example, to restore hazards due to calamitous phenomena. You can see here the latest monitoring parameters. And then, for example, the number of people with illnesses connected with climate change, because we have those numbers, at least not the municipality, but other stakeholders, they have those numbers. We need those numbers to provide, to understand the effectiveness of our measures. So these numbers must be collected each year with in a certain way, with a certain approach, methodology, and those data are fundamental to us to explain the effectiveness of the plan to everybody, particularly to the major, first of all, to our major, but then to also to external stakeholders. We provided the regional guidelines, so we adopted this methodology for ourselves, but then we drafted also these regional guidelines, so to make other municipalities, even the smaller ones, to make them able to follow a similar process somehow. So they are available, they can be downloaded online. You can see here the link. And then another part of the project, quite important to us, was the starting some investments within the project, within the LIFE project, in part financed also by the LIFE program. And each city identified a key action for themselves, pilot actions. For example, you can see here, Padova decided to start with the implementation of a urban park, because the idea of the city is to create a green belt around the historical city center. This is just a part, of course, of the Green Belt, which is a bigger project. But we started with this activity. We started with the restoration of the ancient agricultural landscape to give a value to those areas, because to prevent the urban sprawl, so to prevent those areas to be urbanized again. So create somehow a way to limitate to the city center the urbanization. And then you can see Treviso and Vicenza, two other cities in our region, they decided to focus their attention on hydraulic arrangements. They worked on the canals, for example. They worked on the renaturalization of other canals. They had some problems, and so they started with the analysis of the problems in those specific areas of the cities, and then they started with the investments, providing some hydraulic arrangements. And then you can see the fourth one is the group of municipalities, smaller municipalities. They decided to work on renaturalization, urban regeneration, and then they worked a lot on civil protection, So having a communication strategy for citizens to involve them in communicating the risks, in identifying also the vulnerable people, because when we speak about, for example, heat waves, we need to understand who are at risk, and we need to communicate to them effectively. So this started this action. Here you can see just the description, but we can go on. And then we come to the last part of our project, so the communication of the plan, which is also important. So we approved the plans in the municipal councils, so they became official documents of the municipalities. And then we started the communication. We used, for example, here the GIS tools to communicate differently from the traditional ways, the measures included in the SECAPs. Here, for example, you can see the approach of the metropolitan city of Venice. So we are speaking about a bigger territory, providing the data to the municipalities in the metropolitan city. And you can see here, for example, the map of the green and blue infrastructures provided to the municipalities. Because before, the municipalities were limited to their municipal boundaries, again, as I mentioned at the beginning. And with this map, you can see the connection with the other municipalities in the surrounding municipalities. They can have a bigger picture of the territory. And just a second, I come back. And this is a way also to communicate the SECAP provided by the municipality of Padua. So we decided to map all the measures, the 116 measures, in a web map, so the citizen can get access to this platform, understand where exactly those actions are expected. And for example, they can be interested in understanding the actions in their neighborhood, for example. And here they can download even the template, the data sheet, and all the information about the SECAP. So a new way to communicate the SECAP. I come back a little bit. We provide also other tools within this project. For example, here you can see in his Vicenza, he drafted the guidelines for the hydraulic risk management. They identified some critical points in their area, and then quite typical from their territory. And then they decided to identify a list of actions to manage those critical points. So they decided to start with few critical points, but then the methodology can be, of course, replicated elsewhere in other parts of the city, because the approach more or less can be always the same within the municipal boundary, within the specific territory. And then we made these other guidelines regarding the SUT, so Sustainable Urban Drainage System. You can see, for example, a list of technologies we can adopt in our city, from the green roofs, the green drainage pavements, filtering bands. You can see all the technologies, how you can implement in your municipality. But what we did is to understand which part of the city those technologies can be most effective. For example, green roofs in the city center cannot be really effective. They cannot really done because we have a lot of constraints for changing the rooftops, of course, but probably can be more effective in the industrial area where we have I don't remember the name of the roof, plain roofs. So you can install the green roofs, or you can install otherwise the PV plants, or both can be mitigation and adaptation together. So we need to understand where those technologies can be really effective. So we have the map of the city and the parts perimetered. And then we understood also the co-benefits between those technologies. So if I implement, for example, the green roofs, I can have probably more than a benefit, can have a benefit under the adaptation point of view, but also under the mitigation point of view, for example, for cooling the building, etc. Okay, I'm quite at the end of my presentation. How to communicate again? So we were after the approval of the plan, we were in the squares, in the main fairs in our city with exhibition panels, brochures. We disseminated the brochures, and we organized a lot of events to make the citizen aware of what is adaptation to climate change, what is climate change, because we see that even after those events I listed before, droughts, forest fire, etc., they are still quite skeptical about climate change. So we still need to explain them what is climate change, how the municipality can adapt to climate change. This is not obvious. This is one of the most important parts of our work, to explain, to speak with the citizen mainly, but sometimes also with the important stakeholders. And again, some videos we produced to explain the measures, including the SECAP, in a different way, because you have the list of measures, but not everybody is able to read 400 pages of document. So we provide these videos, quite user-friendly and quite interactive, interesting for the citizen, with the scope of communicating the SECAP and the list of action to the citizens. And probably two slides, and then I finished. Another important part mentioned before by Bernd was the networking. We worked a lot with other projects working on the same topic. For example, here we can see a list of projects working on the same topic in Italy, more or less all of these in Italy, in different interregs and times, live program, H2020. But each one of these projects are dealing with a specific aspect of adaptation. So we tried within our project to put everybody together and to understand if the puzzle was completed or not. And we are on the route to complete the puzzle. So each one of us is doing a lot of work, but now we just need to integrate everything and to communicate this information, this amount of deliverables we drafted to the population. This is the next step of our work. Probably too many slides, but probably the last two. Yeah. Okay, we provided also a toolbox. So with to the other municipalities interested to follow our process, our methodology. You have for example, data sheet. You have the map for the analysis of stakeholders. You have the guidelines, a lot of brochures, and then we produce these videos not for the citizen in this case, but for other municipalities. You can follow the process I described with this presentation, with these videos produced by the technical partners. So you have high quality information provided to those wanted to have a SECAP and have an adaptation plan with some minimum requirements to be really an effective adaptation plan. So thank you very much. I'm at disposal for any question from the public. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giovanni. Very good presentation, giving a quite comprehensive view from the start, identifying the problems, up to communicating the results to the beneficiaries. So I would like to open up for questions from the audience. I can see lady first.
I forget, was it called the action sheet that you had, or?
Yeah, the action sheet is the sheet where you collect the data regarding a measure. So where you have all the information for a measure, one of the 160 in the SECAP. The action sheet is a template to collect the information.
Okay, so it's for everything.
For everything, yeah.
And
there you can see, if the action is mitigation, adaptation, the costs, the effects, the description, the monitoring indicators, the people involved, the companies involved. You have all the information in one sheet to be shared with the key stakeholders in your territory to communicate the action with few information.
And is it also used to mobilize finance or just like include?
We have the sections for the financing. So we have the costs and from where we expect to gather the money. So for example, the regional funds, national funds, European funds. Yeah. So, but not all the actions have this part filled in, because this is the difficult part. For those, the actions already in place. So for those already planned, can be easier to include that part. For those more postponed in the future, because in the SECAP you have also measures for the next 10 years. For the other ones, it's more complicated. You can have a general idea of what is the cost, from where you can get the money, but that's all.
Okay, and then just one more point on. Earlier on, you mentioned the 7 required actions.
Yeah.
Just wondering if you could say how you got those and whether you also provide advice on funding for those actions.
So we selected those measures starting from the preliminary analysis. These are measures focused on heat waves and hydraulic risks, more or less. So focused on these two topics. And with the technical experts, we had the University of Venice, for example, quite experienced with these measures. And we decided to include these minimum requirements because these are the requirements that a SECAP must have, at least in our region, to face those events, those extreme events, because you have the regulation with the building regulation, you have the planning phase with for example, the water plan, which is quite a new instrument, for example, to us, which is dedicated only to the management of, for example, flooding, urban flooding, the different types. You have investments, for example, for the cooling of the big parking areas, you need to invest a lot. We had the first investment last year. We spent 700,000 euros to renovate somehow 6,000 square meters. It's quite a lot, quite expensive measure, but you need to invest also in those areas if you want to reduce the risk to heat waves or to urban flooding. So you have a different types of actions amongst those 7. You have, for example, the action regarding the activation of a municipal office dedicated to adaptation is not always the case in Italian municipalities. Normally, adaptation is included as a small part in the environmental department, and environmental department is not always existing in the municipalities. So create a dedicated office is really a big change for us, particularly for the smaller ones, but also for the bigger ones. Yeah.
Thank you for the question. And you didn't introduce yourself?
Sorry. I'm Shay O'Neill. I work for the GIZ support team to the Covenant of Mayors, Sub-Saharan Africa.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Fabio Tomasi from RSINSPAR, Trieste, Italy. Thank you for your presentation. Your project is extremely impressive and achieved extremely good results. I have 2 questions. The first is, which is the role of the SECAP in your municipality wider strategy? How is its links with other plans like the SECAP and the land planning, etc.? And the second question is, considering that your project involved several municipalities of the same region, which was the role of the Veneto region, if it played a role or could have played a role? Thank you.
Okay, so regarding the first question, as you know, the SECAP is a voluntary plan for everybody in Europe, probably. I don't know if any country decided to make this plan mandatory. I don't think so. So, still not. In France? Yes? Oh, wow. Super. 50,000. Wow, great. No, but in Italy, it is voluntary. So you really need to integrate this plan into the other plans because otherwise it is ineffective. So what we did, and we had a good occasion because at the beginning of 5 years ago, we started with the drafting of several plans at the same time. So we had the green plan dedicated to the green areas. We had the SECAP, the town plan, and then the mobility plan, all at the same time. So we decided to make them, to converge them to the same goals, the same objectives. And the SECAP is somehow like a plan coordinating all the other plans. So including the actions in the other plan from the other plans and coordinating somehow the plans. So making also the actions integrate, for example, actions from the mobility plan with the action from the town plan, make them integrated somehow, which is not always the case again. Because as I mentioned before, the municipalities always work in silos. So you have the different plans, sometimes they don't speak between themselves in the same territory, but they don't speak between themselves. And the second question, the role of the region. So the region is could be an important level, at least in Italy, because they have the money, they manage some money, the RDF funds. They can provide the regulatory framework. In our case, they were involved. They had a small role in the process, could be more probably, but for sure, this is one of the key levels to be involved in the adaptation process. You need to start from the national level. This is probably the most important one. And in Italy, we don't have a plan, an adaptation plan at the national level. So we are the bottom up level, the lower level, the municipalities are far advanced compared to the national level, but you need to start from the national level, then you need to move to the regional one, and then to the bigger cities or to group of smaller cities. And then you have the intermediary levels, for example, the river basins, you have the parks, so you have some levels which are in between the municipalities and the region. So all these levels must be involved in the adaptation process, otherwise it's again ineffective.
I would like to know, so my name is Dominique Bourges from Fedaren. I would like to know, where did you get all this data to make this SECAP?
So the data concerning adaptation.
Yeah.
The data come from our environmental agency at regional level. Each region in Italy has an environmental agency, and normally they provide data to municipalities, to other stakeholders. They have the data concerning the temperatures, the humidity, the precipitations. They are not really precise because you have just one point, for example, for the municipality of Padova, the data. But then with the integration of those data with the satellite imagery, you have a lot of information from the Copernicus satellite. And those data have been analyzed by the university, which are quite experienced on that. So you need to integrate different types of data. But of course, the main source is the environmental agency providing the exact data regarding the trends, the climatic trends, and then you can integrate with the satellite imageries, the imperviousness, etc. You can even calculate, for example, the surface temperature with the satellite imagery with a certain frequency. So that map can be really important when you analyze the heat waves and the heat islands in the city. So you need to integrate different sources.
Okay, and for the mitigation data?
For what concerns mitigation, we have part of the data from our municipality, so the public consumption, but this is more or less the 2% of the total consumption of our municipality. The 98% is private consumptions, more or less, and they come from the DSO normally, distributors. We ask the data to them. They provide us the data with an aggregation, not building by building, but with an aggregation. And then you have also the data related to the gasoline, diesel for the mobility sector. And you gather the data from the minister in that case at the provincial level. So you need to adapt those data to your municipality because you cannot have the data for specific municipality. So it's quite complicated, but you need to collect a lot of information, and this process can take even 1 year, even more. And then you need to calculate those data also in the future. So you need to have the picture at the beginning, the state of, and then the monitoring each 4 years as expected by the Covenant of Major.
I think the aspect of the data was a key driver years ago to strengthen this part, also in terms of the EU adaptation strategy, to recognize this, that the data acquisition and the availability of data is crucial and key. And many local authorities, small local authorities, they do not have the access of this kind of data. As you said, you have maybe one point of the meteorological service, which can give you 1 point for the city of Padua, and for small local authorities, there is then almost nothing. So I think a lot of progress has been done with this. I mean, I was following the Life SECAPs project, which had a predecessor, and I think you were working a lot also on the data acquisition, and that is, I mean, when we look at the objectives of the Life program, where we say we want to implement things, but we realize now that the availability of this information is really crucial, and we also need to dedicate the time and energy and efforts and also money to get this information on a very granular scale sometimes, to know which area is actually affected, and because those are the hotspots, and particularly the borderline areas to have a measure implemented or not implemented can be very crucial where to draw the line, the border. Insurance companies, they do it. They have a lot of data, but they don't want to share it. So there is a big effort, of course, also from the side of the European Commission to make this kind of data and information available. I think the university also played quite a role in this, isn't it?
Yeah, University of Venice for what concern adaptation. And then we have the University of Padova, which is quite one of the ancient in Italy, the second one. They have a big stock, building stock, so they have a big role as a consumer, for example, in our territory. So they have a big percentage of energy consumptions, but then they play also a role in communicating adaptation, mitigation to the students, to the population. They are really playing a good role with us. We are cooperating a lot with them. They are supporting us in the, for sure in the scientific part of the work, but then also in the communication side.
And then you mentioned, of course, the what was it? The local knowledge, which of course is very important. Which sometimes, I mean, scientists are thrilled by Copernicus satellite images, but then they forget that the grandfather maybe knows where not to put the house or certain crops, and this is sometimes forgotten. How do you capture this?
We have an office, an Agenda 21 office since 20 years. We have a long list of people and companies active at local level, and we meet them every time. We have a plan where we are designing something in our territory. So this is an approach of Padova, really focused on participation. So we involve them every time we need it. We need it, and of course they need it because they are the people living the territory we are planning. So it's important to involve them for us, but even for them themselves.
So you said another keyword, local Agenda 21 office. It's your local Agenda 21 office in Padua, but there is an Italian local Agenda
we have the
21
director here, we have the coordination.
Thanks, Daniela, for coming.
Daniela.
And so that is then because, I mean, in terms of local authorities, sometimes we say national government has no say in what the local authorities are doing. I mean, they are autonomous. And but the other dimension then, of course, is local Agenda 21, which is very strong in Italy. I remember Aalborg conventions when they were signed. 150 local authorities were present and signing for this. So I think that's a very strong, another strong networking mechanism which you have in the country, probably even stronger than waiting for guidance from the national level. Is that something you would confirm?
Yeah, I confirm, definitely, sure. This is an important movement started 20 years ago that somehow is reducing a little bit over time, but we have still some good examples. Padova is one of these, but we have a lot of examples from the north and the south and center. So it is a really good network.
Tomislav Novosel from Regea, from Croatia. Congratulations on all of the great work. It's very nice to see such systemic and bottom-up approach to planning at a local level. My question is, as you mentioned, SECAPs are a voluntary document, and the implementation is also not strictly mandated. So I was just wondering, did you also identify and foresee concrete measures and tools for a municipality to actually mandate the implementation of climate actions? I know it's usually a very difficult approach since, as you've said yourself, a huge majority of the energy consumption is in private hands, and also a lot of the land is in private hands. So the municipality has, and the region has issues actually implementing the actions in places which it doesn't own. So how do you go about this?
We saw a lot of SECAPs in the past, just in the paper that have been drafted, and then that's all, and they have not been implemented. What we are doing in Padova is to follow up with the follow-up of the SECAP with the new mandate to reach the climate neutrality. Now we need to sign a climate setting contract, which is quite a strict document, and it is a strong political commitment. So then the major, when the major and the political body approve this document, then they have to report how they are implementing this document, because this become a public document, and the citizens are asking for the implementation of those actions. So but for sure, this is the tough part, because the most part of the actions are implemented directly by the private sector. And it's not always the case to have the capacity to implement those and to drive the situation, even because everybody in Europe, every municipality in Europe, sometimes the political body change with the elections, and if you have a new body, they don't believe in those actions or in those objectives, everything is finished. So this is really a risk we are facing many times, particularly in Italy in this period.
Well, it's a continuous capacity building you have to do as a local Agenda 21 office, I guess. Yeah, thanks. I think that was a good and a relevant question. Just to clarify with the ones from the Covenant of Mayors office here, you said you're from the African one, but I think there is an obligation. It's not just you sign up, I mean, you become member of the Covenant of Mayors, but then there's an obligation to sign up, I mean, to draw up the SECAP. I don't remember now how many years, 2 years, I think. But then for the implementation of action, I think that is the crucial point, because I think there is no clear mechanism for the implementation of the actions. And this is where we are still struggling. I mean, as a live program, we well sometimes say in a hidden language through our priorities in the call documents, best is you come with your SECAP, and then we help you implementing the SECAPs. But then on the other side, we are not a regional funding program where you can do a lot of infrastructure, and sometimes a zebra crossing costs more than what we allow in terms of infrastructure work. So that is a bit the challenge. And this brings us maybe also to the point of innovation. I was about to ask that question also to Leuven, but we of course, and also the DG Klima colleagues, they are keen in seeing innovative actions in also in adaptation. It's very easy catch for the energy efficiency part, but for the adaptation part, what is actually innovative? And we are in a steep learning curve. Not each tree which we plant in a city is maybe the adequate one and the one which helps us in adaptation. So this is what we have to start learning and categorizing and scaling up. Do you have any examples where you would say, oh, this was a fantastic, a new idea or a new intervention in your...
I'm not sure we need the really new ideas in this topic. We need to start with the existing solutions, because everything is there. We just need to implement those measures. They are quite simple measures many times. So I'm not sure we really need the innovation in adaptation. We need an innovation in the process, probably, in the way we are able to implement and monitor the measures, but not really in the measures. But probably this is something also connected to the mitigation, because, for example, if you see the refurbishment of a building, yeah, you have some innovations for sure in the technologies, but then the innovation is in the process. How to, we have spoken a lot today, how to invest, to make new investments in the refurbishment, not exactly how to create new solutions, because the solutions somehow are there, in my opinion.
So that's probably the reason why almost half of the measures out of the 630 are governance measures. So that's good, Giovanni. It was fantastic to have you here and shows the full cycle of what we have in front of us. A lot of work, I would say, and local authorities should take an example of what you have been doing. So again, thanks a lot for presenting here. So and we go for the coffee break. So it's 3:30, I believe. So you will have half an hour coffee break. At 16 hours, there will be the atelier here. So if you're interested in small, medium-sized local authorities, how they cope with replicating smart city aspects, so that would be the place to be. Thanks and enjoy your coffee.